everybody, welcome back to another data-filled customer journey episode that's gonna help you win, beat everybody else, and stay ahead of the game. And I am excited to share since all we've been talking about is customer journey, and that is this entire month. And Ashley and I came across an incredible article from the Harvard Business Review on what is the optimal pattern of a customer journey. Now, one of the things we're focusing on this month is we've been going out and scouring the internet for people talking about customer journey, things that they're looking at, and the prevalence is insane. The amount of people that are calling me and DMing me like, I'm finally ready, I want to know. Don't think we don't know why they want to know. Everybody has now felt the pain from resisting it for so long. They now are like, holy shit, I have to care about my customers. But the only problem is they don't know how to dance in this bucket. So they kind of try to go transactional in nature, right? They try to think about people in um, their actions and their to-do list rather than their beliefs and their behaviors, right? And then they keep trying to outmuscle this broken system. And so these articles are popping up left and right. The amount of data, these giant data companies are like, look, this is what we're seeing. This is what we're seeing. And I'm like, okay, we're paying attention. And so I want you to listen to these. And I want you to, when I remind you to go back to these things, to really focus on them in your business, to think about them, to just ask yourself some questions and be like, where in my business are there opportunities? And identify some of them and then just pick one at a time and start putting them in. Because if you listen to this podcast, even if you just found this podcast, your soul does not like transactional business. You want to make money, you want to have an impact, but you also don't want to feel sleazy, right? And so this matters. And so the more we're reminded of the basics and the more we practice the basics, and then these things on today's podcast are not basic, but the more that we practice those behaviors, the more they become common, and then we do them more and more and more. And so this summary or this article is written from the lens of all this feedback they got from some of the top businesses in the world, talking about they all realize that customer journeys and optimizing their firm's customer journeys and their customers' customer journeys, they're facing a massive challenge, which is which touch points along the journey should they invest in? That is, which moments when the customer interacts with their brand are the most impactful for their overall experience. And here's why they're struggling. Because the way that they're all approaching the problem is to first slice up the customer journey into sequence of discrete serial stages. So, i.e., a collection of touch points that serve the higher function. So these stages are relatively broad, and you've probably heard them all before. Something like pre-purchase, purchase, post-purchase, right? And then when you make decisions based on that, you're missing the fact that nobody buys your product or service because it's the solution, but it's a bridge to the solution. And this doesn't allow you to delineate anything deeper than just the transaction. And so once you identify these stages, they typically drive your behavior and where to devote resources and where to collect the kind of data that provides more visibility. Except when you only focus on the transactions and you only look at that data, you get skewed, broken data that then influences more bad decisions. And so what the Harvard Business Review, they're calling it the continuous patterns. And so I call it customer journey. So they say another way to think of customer journeys is continual patterns of mental experiences traced over time. And I love this example. For example, consider 4 ways an experience with a home delivery furniture company might turn out. Okay. So they have a figure here and they list the 4 examples. Number 1, the furniture could have been immediately delivered in perfect shape, right? That's like perfect. Number 2, it could have been immediately delivered but damaged. Number 3, could have been delayed but undamaged. And number 4, could be delayed and damaged. Now, if you only think about customers in the pre-sale, conversion, post-sale, it doesn't allow you to solve for these nuances. And when I used to teach this, through a model I taught called Every Conceivable Scenario, which then evolved into the 4 paths to the peer and all the customer journey models. But if you really, really think about it, those 4 touch points should be a requirement for us to know and think through, not to wait until customer service deals with it and the client's already pissed. So when I teach you in those 5 important steps of the customer journey, the 5 required ones at the beginning, the acknowledge, prepare, project, pre-handle, excite. In the pre-handle step, the information that I put in there that keeps so many of our customers is the information we're talking about. And so thinking about, oh, if somebody buys my collagen, what could their experience be like? Okay, product arrives, they open it, take it immediately, and love it. Amazing. Cool. Product arrives, they put it in the pantry, they forget to take it. Cool. Product arrives, the box is damaged, they need a new one. Cool. Product arrives, they take it for a week, they stop taking it. Cool. They buy a subscription, product arrives, they forget to open the box, second box arrives, they feel guilty for not taking it. Oh, I need a refund. Cool. But when I think about customer journey, and the reason I'm sharing this with you is these are what they're calling the hold on, where's their word? Continuous patterns, right? They're calling this the optimal pattern or mental patterns. When you give yourself this space to think about this and you start to solve these, well, you're like, yeah, but not everybody's going to have a broken one. I'm like, nope. And you're like, oh yeah, but it's not really a problem if I don't take it. I'm like, nope, but here's where you go. You sit with that and you think about the scenarios of like, okay, somebody opts in for my lead magnet, right? What are the possibilities? They're going to opt in. They're going to download it. They're going to get the email and they're never going to open it, right? That's actually true 90% of the time. We did a study years ago and we figured out that when we also sent a second email with the link to the PDF again, 86% of people clicked on the link. It was mind-blowing. But you list out those scenarios, right? And so what I do is I list out every one of them and then look at what the challenges are and what the solutions are. And so remember in those 5 steps of the customer journey, acknowledge, prepare, project, pre-handle, excite. The acknowledge, right? That's the first step where I acknowledge them for the choice they made, reaffirm their decision. In the prepare step is where I prepare them on how to get the most out of the product, right? So if I thought through, well, the collagen arrives and it ends up in their pantry. Well, I don't want that. So in the prepare step, I'm going to tell them the most important thing to do is set it out on your counter next to your keys in a place that you'll take it. And don't worry, I'm going to tell you 10 more times. And every time you see an email, I want it to be a reminder to take your collagen, right? And so some of those challenges I solve in the prepare step. So that way I'm pre-handling it, but I'm also setting expectations on how to get the most out of the product. And then in the pre-handle objection step, I might not talk about how it could blow up in the box or show up damaged, but I might throw a joke in there. I'd be like, and if this happens, if your product, box, or any shipping material show up damaged, here's exactly how to handle it so we can replace it. We love our UPS and FedEx guys, but occasionally Ace Ventura gets a hold of a box and we can do nothing but send you a new one and say thank you for giving us the chance, right? And now all of a sudden people start thinking, oh, box arrives. When it arrives, the first thing I have to do is open it, put it on my counter. Oh, and George also said if I post a picture of it and tag him, and use a hashtag, I'll be entered into a drawing once a month to give away collagen. Okay, that's a good idea. Okay, now it's on the counter. Oh, shit. The collagen, the seal was broken. It leaked everywhere. Oh, that's right. In that email, they said if that happened, it was because of Ace Ventura. Hold on. I'll shoot him an email because they said send them a picture and they'll just immediately ship a replacement, no questions asked. And so when you start to understand and think through these behaviors and think through the patterns rather just the transactions, it starts to unlock most of the information that we want and we need to build and design customer journeys for optimal experiences. And if you listened to the last episode, and if you didn't, go listen to the last episode, not the last interview, 2 episodes ago, the last Monday episode, where I talked about the stats of like why people stick to companies and what they want to know and what they need to stay loyal, even if your product isn't the best. And it's solved even more so with the information from today's podcast. And so then when you think in those patterns, when you think like that, you start to collect real data that helps you influence decisions of behavior through invitation and permission-based marketing, right? But when you're thinking like this and you think through customer journeys and you think through those experiences, the data that you're collecting is 10 times deeper than anything you're going to collect transactionally. And it's not even about collecting it, it's just paying attention to what works and what doesn't. And so what I love about this article is they did this entire study, and the study will be linked and the article will be linked in the show notes. I recommend all you read it. But they tested this on like movie theater people. It was like mind blowing. But then what they did is they measured the results and they wrote this entire section on how to create the optimal pattern. And so I'm going to read you theirs, but then I'm going to translate it into our language because I had to read this article like 100 times until it made sense because they use really big vocabulary and I had to look up a couple words. Okay. So what they say is that based on our studies, our results suggest that some action points for customer experience managers, right? Any marketers, CMOs, anybody, deciding on how to allocate their limited resources towards improving customer journeys. Many of these suggestions may already be best practice in your organization, but you might be missing at least one of them. And they give some really, really creative ideas, okay? So the first thing they say is think beyond just the stage models. Well, stage models, which focus on pre-purchase stage, the purchase stage, and so on, are still handy. Our findings suggest that companies should collect higher resolution data that unveils the underlying pattern of their customer journeys, such as by tracking the emotional content of how customers mention their brands on social media, or by enabling consumers to continuously upvote or downvote a brand's chatbot responses. And I love this. And so tracking the emotional content of how customers mention their brands on social media. One of the most important things I tell you guys is when you're engaging with people, when they're commenting, you want to copy and paste the words that they're saying exactly so that you know the language that they speak and you can use. And so you start tracking those things, right? And then when you say by enabling consumers to continually upvote, right? One easy way to do that is when I teach customer journey, you know how bullish I am on every day and building the relationship because it's based on value. But then if every third email I ask an open-ended question and I'm like, hey, I would like to know how you're doing. Are we supporting you good? And they start to give me feedback. They're actually deepening their relationship with me because they trust me enough to be honest. And then when I help and I adjust and I take the feedback, it deepens their relationship. And then they continually deepen their endowment, talk about us, and they're giving us feedback because this is a two-way street. We don't exist without our customers. So as much as we want to think that like they're in our race car, they build it with us because without them, we don't exist. And so there's a part of this that you have to think about your customers as your teammates because you're designing a field and a game that they want to play, but they're scared to play. And you have to get them excited to play and to pay to play. And so I think it's important. So I love that breakdown. Okay. The second thing they say is to avoid yo-yos. There is nothing wrong with adding variety and eventfulness to your customer experiences, but make sure it is the content that is fluctuating and not the mental experience of the customer. Although this is easier said than done, the mental customer journey should be as smooth as possible end to end. This is where I'm so bullish on your lighthouse in knowing your movement, the things we talk about the event and the backstage pass. Because when you know your movement and then you know your values and your scripture statements and these things that I teach, that's where consistency and congruency comes from. So from the top down, it ensures that you're always giving a consistent and congruent mental experience, which allows people to subconsciously trust you. But every time there's a break, when you say, I'm going to email you every week and you don't, when you say, I'm going to drop a podcast every Friday and you don't, every single one of those is a hole in the bucket. And eventually, there become enough holes that the water will never stay in and they can't trust you anymore. And so consistency and congruency is the most important thing. And they echo it. So I agree. Number 3, and this one is so good. Leverage language. Some ways of gaining visibility into customer journey, such as measuring search results, connections on social media, or geographic coordinates, may be costly or viewed as invasive by customers, triggering backlash. Actually agree. An alternate approach is to leverage the sentiment of the language that customers use to summarize their experiences. Try to proactively collect such data as a window into the mental customer journey via quick one-word summary prompts, or more standard approaches like customer feedback surveys, reviews, asking polls on social media, asking people to DM you your thoughts. Leverage the language itself, not just 1 to 5-star ratings. And so that is a perfect tie-in. And so when I go into a company and I start helping them design their customer journey and get consistent and congruent, all of them tell me they don't know how to talk to their customers or how their customers talk in one way, shape, or form. And for a company to hire me, they have an existing product and existing revenue that's doing good. So the first place I go is I go straight to the Amazon reviews. I go straight to the product reviews on the website and on the Amazon, but I go straight to Amazon first because people are way more honest on Amazon than they are on your website, especially if they hate you. And so the first thing I do is I go on Amazon and I start reading their reviews and I start copying and pasting the words their customers are using. Like I just copy and paste the entire sentences into a document, um, on a Google Doc I have from my buddy Corey. Love you, Corey. I miss you, buddy. Corey Warren. Um, Called Good Words and Bad Words. And so on the good words, I just go copy all of the reviews, the positive reviews in the good words doc. And then I go to my social comments and I look for an engaging post where somebody engaged a lot. And there was a lot of like deeper engagement in the comments on some content, and I'll start collecting those. And I put all of those in the good words doc. And then in the bad words doc, I go straight to the Amazon negative reviews, and then I start Googling all of the negative reviews of the company. And I then put those in the bad words doc. And so when I start collecting and leveraging that language, like they're talking about, one of the things I used to say all the time is you never need a copywriter. You just need to copy and paste what your customers are saying. And so a lot of people struggle to translate because they forget how far they are from where their customer is. They're teaching them at the beginning stages, but you might be 12 stages away. And typically we forget the language that was there. So that is one of the easiest tells. And so I tell people all the time, screenshot your reviews, screenshot the times you're tagged. Like when you see a comment that's like, Jesus, that's how they described it, screenshot it. And for us in our company, Ashley and I, we have a Slack channel called Rainy Day. And so we put every single positive piece of feedback and content that we see in that Rainy Day channel on Slack. So I just have this one channel that's gone on forever of every positive thing people have said is that my brand's evolved and things like that. And so we look at those things because you can gather a lot of data when you look, because you're looking deeper than just the stages. Okay. Which brings us to number 4, end with a bang. Invest in later touch points along the journey, as when Disney World offers fireworks at the end of each day, or when furniture and retail firm Crate and Barrel conveniently brings all the packages to your car. It's easy to think that once you have the customer's money, your work is done, i.e., when I say to you all the time, your job is not done when you sell the product. Your job is done when they achieve the result or get closer to it with the use of your product or service. A lot of people lose because they think their job is done when they get the sale, and they try to go get more sales, and they miss the fact that every ounce of business success, scalability, and everything is hinged on retention and how people experience your brand. So this is huge. But as we saw in their study, later events still influence your long-term bottom line. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Relationship speed algorithms. This is the long game. You can play the short game and the long game at the same time. But when you focus on the long game, like I'm talking about in this podcast and the 2 podcasts ago, you win the short game at the same time. For instance, a home delivery furniture company can invest in predictive algorithms that allow it to start shipping inventory just in time for a given order. It could have checks and balances to prevent damaged inventory from ever getting shipped, right? So they're using commercial examples. But when you think about this, one of the things that I always teach you is that customer journeys are not linear, they're cyclical, right? They're a system. And every time somebody hits a mile marker, they start another one, right? So if somebody's coming you to buy your service or to buy your product, they buy that product, they use that product, we help them use the product. And then once they are complete and know how to use the product and they have a habit, they might start another journey, right? And so if you sell a product in a store that somebody has to install in their home and you want to own the experience, well, then you know that your job isn't done when they walk out of the store. You might want to help them in the car or give them a tip, but then maybe introduce them to people who can hang it or give them some help, or many things where you own that experience, right? And then the way that my brain goes, I'd be like, well, I'll just go install it for free, because then when you're there, I'll just bring my swag, I'll mount it dope, I'll run the wires clean, and then I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. The speakers sound great. Let me know if you ever need any more work. I'll get a call again, right? There's a lot of ways to think about it. And so even for me, how I think about it is like when we run our events, right? We do a 3-day event with a 4th day that's optional as an upgrade for one-on-one coaching the whole day. And I know that when somebody is consuming our content and thinking about buying the event, the moment they buy an event, they just stopped the process of considering it. and they bought the event. So now it starts a second customer journey. And that customer journey is now, how do I get them to the event, right? And so there's a big gap of distance. And then once they get to the event begins, but then the event ends. And when the event ends, they go from being in my room every day to back in their life. And I'm like, okay, cool. But a new customer journey starts, right? So then I follow up with videos and messages supporting it through the process. And so when they say things like end with a bang, what you want to think about is that just because the inflection of your customer journey starts in the beginning, it doesn't mean that you ever stop. Like, you want to own the journey all the way until they're never your customer again. And the more you can do that, the more likely they are to stay in your world. And just like anything in relationships and workouts and diets and in hobbies, we need stimulation, right? We need emotional things to keep us interested. And customer journeys are no different. We just tend to want to play on the emotions of like winning and excitement and connection. And sometimes the emotions are sadness and anger. But when you think through the experience of the behaviors of a customer journey, you can start to find those inflection points. And like, I'll give you a really easy example. I know so many people that sell like 90-day workout programs. They email them every couple days. They have a video call once a week. And then I was like, yeah, but why not like twice a week, just drop a random text message of like a motivational quote and a motivational reminder. And they started doing it, and people's completion rates went up. People were consuming more people were coming to the calls, and it helped across the board. And they just needed a separate touch point or a separate inflection point. And so when you start to think about these things, you think about the experience of the customer like they're your teammate, and you're trying to help them get the most out of your brand, your product, your service. That includes your free content. That includes your podcast. That includes your lead magnet. You should never have those things into the world to exacerbate somebody's pain and not give them a fucking solution. That's not marketing. That is emotional abuse. The end, right? Marketing is saying, like, I have this free piece of content on the 3 mistakes people make in customer journey. Here's what they are. Don't make them. Now, if you want to know more and you want me to teach it, go here, right? But we have the ability to consistently help people in every single touch point. And we focus on these things, they all add up. And just like in 2 podcasts ago on the customer journey stats, they said that they were like 71% more likely to stick with the brand if before they bought from the brand, they taught them how to be better, how to use the product or service, how to understand it, and how to actually achieve something. And when they win before you win, they'll stick for life. Like, it was studied. And so I'm telling you, it's very, very, very important. So number 5, ramp things up. This one they answer in the lens of offerings. If you have a stronger and weaker offerings, consider arranging these along the journey so that they ramp up from least to most impressive. Examples include increasingly entertaining events on a cruise, increasingly more special meals in a multi-course menu, or increasingly high-stakes matches in the World Cup, i.e. quarter, semi, and final. Notice how this option does not even involve adding more money to each point, but just smartly arranging the points to greater effect. And I absolutely love that. And what they're really talking about is on the entire customer journey series I did on the Catalyst by Jonah Berger. And if you have not gotten the customer journey lead magnet on that, DM us on Instagram, customer journey, and we'll send it to you. But my favorite chapter from that book, The Catalyst, is the distance chapter, and it talks about the movable middle. And so when you start to think about that, when you think about them ramping things up, what they're really doing is talking about making it bite size and making it digestible. So even when I teach you the 4 paths to the pier, and I'm like, well, my ultimate goal is you end up at one of our events, mindofgeorge.com/event. We're about to release tickets and they're going to sell it fast. But you end up in an event, right, for $600 or $3,000 or whichever ticket you buy, right? But then I know before that, I might want to build a relationship with you or help get your mindset prepped. And I'm like, okay, cool. So my content should be something around mindset or customer journey that I'm going to teach at the event anyways. But now I'll give it to you and I'll help you learn it and implement it. So now you're more confident, you're more prepared, you're going to get more out of it, but you're also getting better in the process of getting there. And so that movable middle concept is so huge. And so this is where in marketing you've heard like value ladder, right? But we're not speaking about it in those stages. We're speaking about it in behavior, right? And so that's why I created the 4 paths to the pier, because it's never a money thing. It's always a I'm not ready, right? And so how this thinking from this article, I love, even in that every conceivable scenario situation earlier, one of the reasons I figured out customer journey is I was working on abandoned carts, and I was like, this just seems so nuts to me. Like, okay, I get that 8% converted, but of those 92%, there have to be some that are super close, right? It had to be like one question, one idea. And so rather than discount, let's ask. And when we started to ask, they started to tell us. And I was like, holy moly. You know, in the beginning, we were recovering like 8%. And then we started to listen. So I started to build this cart abandonment sequence based on people's feedback, because we were asked them, like, why didn't you buy? What was missing? And that's what developed into my 4-part cart abandonment sequence. That's just one for the last 6 or 7 years. And we went from recovering 8% to recovering like 50% at its peak. And the reason being was because there were 10-15% of people that just had one question or didn't know one thing, and because we didn't cover it in the marketing or they didn't read it on the product detail page, they just didn't buy. And by us reaching out and offering those solutions, instead of convincing them to buy with a discount, they solved their challenge, got clarity, then they invested and they stuck around. Because if you tend to look at the data of people who end up as a first-time customer through a cart abandonment or through a discount, and then compare the lifetime value and acquisition cost of that customer to one who bought a product full price and then bought a second one and then found a discount, you'll find some massive swings of data leading to one side. And so this movable middle piece is important, and I think it's important to chunk it down. But just thinking like this is huge. Like, just not assuming that, oh my God, 10% of people bought, 90% didn't. So the only reason they didn't buy is because they didn't have a discount. And so let's send them a discount. Like that creates permanent damage, and it's not the best option. There are so many more. Very rarely have I found it is, and there are a few businesses and instances, but there are like 1 out of 1,000 that have come across my plate. And so just thinking like this will speed it up and spice it up. And so then in their last one, I love this one, add a climax. Make one touch point particularly impressive so that it becomes a memorable peak, as when patrons of Santoku Ramen are greeted with a chorus of servers, or when a chef visits their restaurant patrons, or when yoga studios offer hands-on therapy through a session. What they mean by add a climax, when I teach this, I say add a level of personalization, right? So where can you do this on the easy level? Well, you know, one of the things I've been doing for years in teaching is that when somebody follows me on Instagram, I think it's important to thank them because they chose to follow me. And so I send them a video message. Now, normally people don't message people for following them most of the time, especially people in my industry or my peers, okay? Second, if they were, I doubt it would be anything other than thanks, right? And then I'm pretty sure they're not sending audios and videos. And so, of course, I could just send a message, say, hey, thanks for the follow, right? But anybody could do that. And I was like, could send it on. I'm like, no, I'm a guy. I'm a video. I do relationships. Let's send a video. So when the add a climax is like they follow me on Instagram, and then the first touch point after is they get a personalized video from me saying, thank you, I appreciate you, I can't wait to help you, let me know if you have any questions, start with my content, welcome to the family. That moment sets the entire impression. Like, that was their first impression of me. Or when I go give a keynote to an audience I've never met, and they're like, why did you stick around for 8 hours and answer all of our questions? I was like, because I caused the questions and I'm here to help, but I also genuinely want to help. But their first impression and experience of me is when other people speak, they leave. I speak and I stay. I attend the event. I listen. I give feedback, and people appreciate that. And so when you're thinking about adding a climax, what you want to do is add a heightened emotional experience that benefits the customer or benefits the person, or I like to call them your teammate, so that they have a memory that's important to them. And so that's how I like to think about it. So when you think about those touch points, think about where you can add depth, right? Think about where you can personalize. Like, let's say you're running an event. There's a big difference between people getting a gift bag and people getting a gift bag with a handwritten letter about them, right? Subtle things, right? There's a lot of ways that you can do it, right? And I'll take it employees, right? I watch so many companies just assume they know what their employees want. And they're like, oh, I'll give them a bonus. And they give them cash. And the employee's disappointed. And they're like, cash means nothing to me. I would have rather you, I'm like, bought XYZ. They're like, yep. Right. And so when you think about these things, you need to think about the people and the feelings and the experiences that they're having, because it's people's behaviors and patterns that dictate the success, and it's not linear. And so when you think linear, you think it's a series of steps. If you think it's a series of stages, you're going to lose the game. And so I mentioned a lot today. I mentioned the 4 path to the peer. Go refresh that. I gave you a lot of ideas, but really take some of this and put it into practice. Take some of this and add depth. I'm telling you, if you don't, you're going to lose. The big guys are paying attention and they're trying to spend money to create depth, and it's not working, and they're realizing it. And so you have an advantage still. And so do this, invest in this, pay attention to this, think like this. Anything that landed today, any thought, the one thing you're like, oh shit, got to do that. Go do it. Okay. And keep putting it together. The rest of the month is going to continue to be around customer journey. So pay attention, take notes, and most importantly, keep implementing and keep practicing. Okay. I'm going to go. I'm going to go work out. I'm going to go be a Montana guy, go hang out with the family. But that's what I got for today. I love this podcast. I appreciate you immensely. Thank you for being here for my Montana power interruption because of the fire. Maybe not. If it's not, please tell me. I'm being really overconfident right now, but I hope it was helpful. But either way, I appreciate you. I love you. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful day. Remember that relationships will always beat algorithms, especially the one with yourself. So I'll either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your ear bowls. But either way, we out.